it's Charlene and welcome back to my channel. I was gonna say something really cool, but it just wasn't working. So as you can see, the title of this video is reading, what did I title this? Reading my very first short story and my very first published story. So I'm going to go ahead and start reading. Well, not really start reading, but I'm just going to tell you about this first one. So in fourth grade, I actually remember doing this very vividly. My teacher, Miss Cook, and then I guess her partner, Miss Olmsted, we had a writing project, and it was around winter time. And so it was called The Day My Snowman Came to Life. And this is actually the book here. So I don't know, I'm gonna back up. But yeah, so this is the book here. So this is actually probably one of my oldest and favorite things that I own, because I'm pretty sure this is the story that I wrote when I decided I was going to be a writer. And honestly, as a fourth grader, it's like when I actually went back and reread this recently, and how did I even find this? I was looking through my old stuff and I saw it and I was like, wait a minute, I remember this. And there's like, it even has my picture in it. Look at me. Fourth grade me. Can y'all even see this? Okay, yeah, that's fourth grade me. So I remember this project, like it was winter time, like I said, and it started off as a writing project, and then I remember my teacher saying that she wanted to do something more with it. So she compiled all of our stories after, they were all graded and finished up and edited, and turned it into this cute little book. And I'm just like, I'm so glad I still have this, because guys, this is so cute. It's a cute little children's book. Anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and start reading it, if I can find the page again. Where is it? I know it's on like 40 something. Is it? Why am I at the back of the book? Come on. Okay. Okay, anyways. So, bear with me, guys. One morning at my cousin's house, I woke up to an icy and freezing day. Out of my window, I saw mounds of snow. The snow was so deep, you could make deep, deep footprints. I quickly got on my clothes and raced outside to see how beautiful the snow looked. I picked up a chilly snowball. Oh my god. I picked up a chilly snowball to see how far I could throw it. I decided to build a snowman. First, I took a small snowball and rolled it into a huge round ball. Then, I took a medium-sized snowball and made it a little smaller than the bottom. I am so terrible at reading my stuff out loud. Oh my god. Then I took a medium-sized snowball and made it a little smaller than the bottom. After I built the large-sized middle of the body, I built a smaller head. Once I finished my snowman, I took a step back. The snowman looked lopsided. I ran quickly inside for my items to put on my snowman. I got a small black hat, a colorful scarf, one skinny pointy carrot, 2 red buttons, and 3 small black buttons. I put all of my accessories on the snowman. I took a step back one last time, but still he looked lopsided. Shortly, the snowman moved his arms side to side. Then his head moved, and I screamed in horror. He said, "Do not be afraid. I was made to be friendly." Oh my god. What? Anyways, continuing on. So he also said, "Let's play out here in the snow." I suggested we have a snowball fight. We helped each other make our snow forts. The snowman made so many big and fat cold snowballs it filled his fort. Some got in my freezing cold hair. I made really small snowballs. Now we were ready to battle one another. Oh my god. I threw the first snowball. One of them even hit the snowman. He was always ducking into his snow fort, so he would not get hit. We played for a long time until we got tired. Instantly, I look around. I began to feel too warm in my heavy winter gear. The sun was coming out of the clouds. The snowman was beginning to melt like an ice cream sundae on a hot summer day. Oh, that's so cute. I love that. I began to cry. I wished that the sun had never come out. I realized that tomorrow it would be cold all day and I could build another snow friend to play with. I couldn't wait for tomorrow. So this story was actually really short. I don't know why I thought it was longer, but I don't know. That's my very first short story. And like I said, I'm pretty sure this is the story where I decided I wanted to be a writer. And look at me now, going to grad school for writing. How cool. Anyways, so moving on. This is the story or the book where I got my very first short story. My very first story published. The only story I've actually gotten published, might I add. But when I wrote the story, it was originally just for an assignment for my workshop class in undergrad. And after a couple of other edits, I was like, why not just try and submit it and see what happens? I honestly did not think it would get chosen for this edition, but I guess folks liked it enough where they decided to go ahead and publish it. This journal, Humid, is actually SFA's undergrad literary journal, and I don't even know how many editions are out right now, but this is the 10th edition. I really don't. I was told. I also wrote a poem and I submitted it for the 11th edition my senior year. And I'll never know for sure or not if it got published. Like, I think someone told me it did, but I really have no idea. So I'm going to look more into that. And if I ever get my hands on that edition, I'll probably read it. But, yeah, so this story I wrote is actually kind of like I wouldn't really say a response piece, but it's more like has to do with like a lot of Black culture and what's going on, and just every like Black lives and stuff like that. And it's not really a new story, but it's kind of like a two-sided story, I guess you could say. But clearly, it gained enough attention from the editors of the Humid Journal. I was on the Humid Journal when I got this published, but I couldn't really vote since it was my own story. But anyways, I'll probably edit that out. So the story is called Black and Blue. I'm just going to go ahead and read it. So here we go. The south side of San Antonio was unkempt. A pair of Nike shoes dangled from the telephone wires above the two officers as they sat in their vehicle patrolling the neighborhood. There were several cardboard boxes and empty soda cans sprawled across the brown grass. To their left, the crack houses were boarded up with wooden pallets. Graffiti covered the billboards further down the road. Their car sat a few yards away from a stop sign with a white X spray painted across it. The siren of an ambulance wailed in the distance, drowning out the bark of a guard dog. Officer Lund sat behind the wheels, shoving Doritos into his mouth. He was fighting off sleep. He took a sip of his coffee, hoping the caffeine would give him a sudden burst of energy. In the passenger seat, Officer Ballard held his phone to his ear, arguing with his wife in hushed tones. There was a frustrated sigh of relief after Ballard shoved the phone into the front pocket of his pants. I bet you $20 the Spurs are going to lose this weekend, Lund said. He shoved another chip into his mouth. He wiped his hands clean and dabbed a napkin at the side of his lip. I'm not taking that bet. Besides, the Spurs never lose at home. Ballard chuckled and turned down the police scanner. I don't know about that, man. They got Cleveland tonight, said Lund between yawns. The Spurs never lose at home. I want $20 tomorrow morning. Lund took another chip and shoved it into his mouth. The two of them had been sitting in their car for an hour with no sign of suspicious activity. We should head back to the station, Lund. This neighborhood is pretty quiet now. We can come back tomorrow. Ballard shifted his weight in his seat. There was a manila folder in his lap, the contents lying in a neat pile, with a photo of a young man paperclipped to the top page. I say we hold out for about 10 more minutes. Lund reached for his cup of coffee and took another sip. This neighborhood is never quiet. Look, my daughter has a recital tonight. My wife will be pissed if I miss another one. Let's go back to the station. Ballard said. Lund didn't budge. A green Volvo rode by and took a right turn. 5 more minutes, Lund asked. Unlike Ballard, who had been in the force for 10 years, Lund was nearing the end of his first year, and he wanted to make another bust. Fine, 5 minutes. The two officers sat in silence, half listening to the scanner. Lund watched as Ballard flipped through the reports of a break-in. A photo of the suspect had fallen loose from the paperclip and slid to the floor. Ballard reached to pick it up, and the rest of the papers scattered at his feet. Turn that scanner up. I want to hear what they're saying. Maybe they caught that thug we've been looking for. Ballard sat up and fixed the papers, then turned the volume up. It beeped before Officer Pope's voice came through. 10:25. Do you have contact with Officer Pope? Copy. He returned to the station. The static between each voice as they came through filled the car. From the rearview mirror, Lund noticed a black kid walking with his head down. He wore a black cap and an oversized Spurs hoodie. His hands were shoved into the pockets of his hoodie and his pants sagged. His pant legs dragged on the concrete. He never looked up as he approached their vehicle. He kicked a few pebbles as he neared the stop sign. The boy's head looked up, finally seeing them. Let me see that photo, Ballard. Lund held out his hand. Ballard placed a black and white photo of a male with dreads and a goatee into his outstretched hand. Well, that's our guy, Ballard. Let's go get the son of a bitch. Oh my god, I forgot I wrote that in there. Let me see that. Ballard snatched the photo from Lund as he started the vehicle. He shook his head and laughed. That's not him. He's too young. He yawned. Well, I want to follow him and see what he does. Maybe we can bring him in for something. Lund inched the car slowly around the block, keeping a fair amount of distance between themselves and the boy. Like what? He's minding his own business. Leave him alone. Let's just watch him, see if he starts any trouble. Fine, Ballard said. Rookies, he mumbled. The young man jaywalked across the street and entered the 7-Eleven. The two officers watched as the boy placed a candy bar onto the counter and shook hands with the clerk. Lund tapped his fingers against the steering wheel, praying something would happen. He really wanted to rid the streets of as many thugs as possible. He remembered the fear and anger he felt after being mugged by a group of black men a few years back. They had dragged him into an alley and beat him till he could no longer stand. He smirked, feeling quite proud of himself now that he was in law enforcement. It's a shame that these people don't go and do anything with their lives. All they do is smoke weed and cause trouble, Lund said. He picked up the walkie-talkie. We have a 1066, over. What's your location? The voice said over the static, south of 410 on MLK Parkway. We'll stand by. An old woman shuffled her feet as she slowly walked to the green Volvo. A crow squawked again and again, but Lund couldn't see where it was coming from. The door was swinging wide open as she drove over to the gas pumps. Lund thought it was rather odd, but he dismissed her behavior to old age. It wasn't long before the young man left the store with a fountain drink in hand. He started for the sidewalk, then glanced over his shoulder at the old woman. He jogged over, picked something off the ground, and banged his fist on the window of her car. Are you seeing this, Ballard? Lund took the car out of park. I'm watching, Ballard said. He had dark circles under his eyes. Well, pull in, let me do the talking, Lund. Lund coasted into the lot and parked the car in front of the Volvo. The young man was reaching into the window, but as soon as he saw them, he backed away. Ballard stepped from the cruiser. Is this young man bothering you, ma'am? He tugged at his waistband, and then rested his hand on top of the old woman's car. Lund snuck around while the boy was distracted. The punk was debating on whether or not he should run. Lund drew his gun. No, sir, the woman answered feebly. The boy started to walk away, but Lund pointed the revolver at the base of his neck. Freeze, boy! The woman in the car was craning her neck to get a look at the young man who was now standing behind her car with his hands raised, the ice shaking against the styrofoam. Lund glanced at the young man and saw a faint outline of a gun in his back pocket. Don't you dare move, understand? He tried to hide the fear in his voice, the boy said. The boy said, yes, sir. Lund kept his eye on what he suspected was a gun in his back pocket. There was no way it could be anything else. Sir, I was just returning the lady's wallet. The boy's hand twitched. I said don't move. Lund could tell that the kid was trembling. The ice shook harder in the cup. Lund watched his hand slowly move toward the gun. He grabbed the boy's wrist, twisting his arm behind his back, shoving him to the ground. The cup burst, splattering against his pants. It was cold and his socks were now soaked. Damn it, you son of a bitch. I ain't did nothing, man. The boy's voice rose and he struggled, squirming under Lund's grasp. I told you I ain't take nothing. Lund pulled out his pepper spray and directed the nozzle toward his face. This ought to hold you. Lund, that's enough, Ballard yelled. The boy was still screaming and reaching for his gun. He coughed and gagged, yelling at the top of his lungs. Stop resisting, Lund shouted. I can't see. Officer Lund, that's enough, Ballard said, grabbing Lund's arm. Stop resisting. Lund said again, help, I can't see. Lund loosened his grip slightly, but still kept the young man pinned to the ground. Lund glanced up to see the 7-Eleven employee running out the door. Hey, what the hell y'all doing? Stay back, Ballard warned. He aimed the gun at the store clerk. Ain't this some bullshit? Let go of my dude. He ain't did nothing to you pigs. Lund set down his pistol to keep the young man still. He saw the young man reach into his back pocket. Lund looked up at Ballard, who had cocked his pistol, then pointed at the young man on the ground. The sound exploded in the air around them with a loud crack and then another. The second bullet landed in his left leg. The boy shook, then seized up and went still. Lund quickly checked for a pulse. Blood pooled with the orange soda. Call for backup, Lund said. The sky had turned from azure to soft shades of pink and orange. The streets became flooded with the evening's rush hour. Cars honked while motorcyclists weaved their way in and out of weaved their way in and out of lanes. Sirens wailed in the distance. The brick buildings to the right were run down. Vines grew up the walls and sprouted in and out of the broken... What am I saying here? Vines grew up the... Oh, okay, never mind. Vines grew up with the walls and sprouted in and out of the broken windows. The left side of the street was lined with crack houses that had been raided time and after time again. Gates began to line the sidewalks as Jared entered a more secure neighborhood. Mr. Jenkins' German Shepherd Zeus barked as he passed by the familiar stoop. Jared's old babysitter, Mr. Jenkins, sat in his rocking chair with his newspaper in hand while smoking a cigarette. His beard was streaked with gray and his features had succumbed to old age. He wore a pair of old black house slippers, a wife beater, and the thick black device wrapped around his left ankle. Mr. Jenkins coughed and waved as Jared passed by. You gonna walk by without saying hello? Did I not teach you well enough, boy? He paused to cough, then cleared his throat. Where are you headed off to now? He called. Picking up my little brother from basketball practice, sir, Jared said as he shifted the weight of his backpack on his shoulder. He paused for a brief moment to talk to the old man. You tell that boy to stick to the books. If I catch him running up and down these damn streets one more time, I'm calling your mother, understood? Mr. Jenkins was right. The neighborhood was rough. It was no place for a boy Terrence's age to get caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. Yes, sir, I'll get him straightened out. Mr. Jenkins nodded and Jared continued on down the street. Mr. Jenkins meant business. If he told you to do something, you did it. No questions asked. The whole neighborhood respected him. He was known for helping kids stay out of trouble and helping them stay focused on school. Jared remembered all the barbecues and block parties Mr. Jenkins would host during football season when he was younger. But these days were long gone, especially now that the Fuzz was keeping a closer eye on him. He wasn't allowed to ask why. When it came to Mr. Jenkins, you didn't want to know why. He spoke when spoken to, and you responded with yes, sir, or no, sir. Jared glanced at his watch. He had about 30 minutes or so before he had to be at Martin Luther King Middle School to pick up his brother and get him home. They were late. If they were late, their mother began to worry. He waited until the road was clear before crossing the street. He noticed there was a cop car pulled over about 20 feet in front of him. He kept his head forward, not wanting to draw too much attention. He could still hear his father's voice in the back of his head. Those pigs don't care about us. They tell you to do something, you do it. I'll be damned if I ever see your face on the news. You hear me? Jared shoved his hands deep into the pockets of his Spurs hoodie and kicked loose pebbles along the way. From the corner of his eye, he could see the cops were watching him. They had no reason to stop him. He was just walking. The sidewalk veered off to the right, and he followed it to the 7-Eleven. His brother Terrence always wanted a large fountain drink and a Kit Kat bar immediately after practice. As he neared the 7-Eleven, a strange feeling swept over him. He couldn't quite place what it was. His stomach grew tight as the hairs on his neck raised when a crow landed on the rooftop. He quickly glanced over his shoulder to see the cops following him from a distance. He decided to ignore the feeling. He was being paranoid. He shrugged his shoulders and went into the store. His buddy Ryan stood behind the cash register working with a customer. Ryan's uniform was red and a thick solid line ran down on either side of the sleeves. The familiar orange and green logo was embroidered across his chest. "Hey man, you trying to hoop tonight?" Ryan gave the old woman her change. She shuffled her way to the door with her bag of sodas. "Catch you later, Verna," he called after the woman. She shuffled her feet across the tile and used her fragile white hand to push open the door. "You too, dearie. Tell your mother I still have her crock pot." "Will do, Verna." Ryan waved at her before she could disappear through the door. "Yeah, I'll go. Who else is down?" Jared moved closer to the counter, continuing on with the conversation, and shook hands with his friend. He picked up a bag of Skittles, wondering if he should get something for himself, then set it back down. "Just you, Paul, Wes, Spinks, and me," said Ryan. Jared chuckled. "You know Wes got 2 left feet. Boy couldn't hoop if his life depended on it." "Yeah, but he's a chill dude." Ryan glanced out the window, noticing the cop across the street. "What's with the fuzz?" "Beats me, man." Jared grabbed a Kit Kat from the shelf next to him and placed it on the counter. "Listen, man, I gotta go pick up Terrence. I'll meet you at the park around 7. "Aight, cool. This all you getting, bruh?" He swiped the Kit Kat over the scanner and it beeped. Jared shook his head. "I gotta get one of those fountain drinks. You know how Terrence is." "Oh, right, I forgot." Ryan pushed a few buttons on the cash register. Jared walked over to the machine. A row of Coke products were labeled across it. He grabbed a Coke and filled it with orange Fanta. The orange liquid foamed at the top before settling with the ice. A few droplets ran down the side onto Jared's fingers. He took a few sips from the cup, then refilled it. After filling the cup to the brim, he moved back over to the counter and dug out a few dollars from his front pocket. He placed it on the counter. "Keep the change, man." Ryan nodded as he headed out the door. As Jared exited the shop, he could hear the crow squawking above him. The cops were still sitting there on the far side of the street, watching from a distance. The old woman that had been in the store before had moved her car over to the gas pumps. She was taking her time to fill her tank. Jared noticed that the woman has dropped her wallet as she was re-entering her vehicle. "Ma'am," Jared called as she slammed her door shut. Jared jogged over, hoping to catch the woman before she could pull away. The wallet was pink and dotted with specks of silver and gold. He knelt down to pick it up and knocked on the woman's window. The window rolled down just barely an inch, her eyes wide with concern. Jared waved the wallet at her. "You dropped this, ma'am." "Oh, bless your sweet little heart. Thank you, dear." She rolled down the window even further to allow Jared to return the wallet. In that same moment, the cruiser had been sitting on the far side of the street. In that same moment, the cruiser that had been sitting on the far side of the street signaled its lights and drove into the lot. "You take care now," she smiled sweetly and started her engine. "You too, ma'am." Jared grinned and stepped away from the vehicle. The police officer stepped from his car, pulling at his waistband, and his hand hovered over the gun for a moment, and then he changed his mind. He motioned for the woman to roll down her window. "This young man bothering you, ma'am?" the police officer asked, nodding in his direction. His pudgy white hand rested on the roof of his car as he bent down. Jared could see that the woman was craning her neck to get a good look at him. "No, officer." The officer dismissed the old woman and she drove away. This was the kind of moment Jared's father had warned him about as a child. "It's because we're black, son. One look at us and they think we're up to no good. If you aren't rapping a lyric or dribbling a ball, you best believe they'll do anything they can to put you behind bars." Jared could hear his heart pounding in his chest. He figured that if he walked away now, nothing would happen. Jared took a step to the side and to head back towards the shop. "Freeze, boy!" Jared froze. There was a clicking sound next to his ear. "Don't you dare move, understand?" "Yes, sir." Jared had no idea where the second cop came from. He didn't even see him get out of the cruiser. The other officer stood next to the woman's car, his brows furrowed. "Sir, I was just returning the lady's wallet." "You take anything from it, young man?" said the first officer. He closed the space between them, folding his arms across his chest. Jared didn't answer, the cup shaking in his hand. "You better answer him, boy," said the second cop. No, sir." He glanced toward the shop. He couldn't see Ryan from where he stood. Surely he would see something. Maybe he was in the back restocking the refrigerators. With his free hand, Jared reached for his back pocket to pull out his cell phone. I said, don't move. The cop was in his ear. He could feel spittle dropping onto the back of his neck. I'm just gonna get out my phone and wallet, aight? Jared slowly reached in his pocket again for his wallet so that he could show the officers his ID. The officer standing behind him shoved Jared to the ground. The fountain drink in his hand burst onto the concrete. The cold ice seeped through his sweater as the officer pushed his face into the ground. His chin hit the concrete hard, and he bit his tongue on impact. His face scraping against the ground. The officer was twisting his arm behind his back. I'm not doing nothing, man. Jared's voice twisted with fear and anger. I told you, I ain't take nothing. The officer pulled out a can of pepper spray. Jared's eyes filled with tears. He shut them involuntarily and cried out. He struggled to free himself. Stop resisting, the first cop said. I can't see, he called out, ignoring the officer's warning. Help, I can't see. Stop resisting, he said again. There was a loud ringing in Jared's ear. The crack echoed in the air around him. He coughed, and a strange metallic taste grew in his mouth. He struggled to lift his head up and saw Ryan running from the store yelling. But with the ringing in his ears, he couldn't hear a word he was saying. Another crack erupted, and the crow that had been sitting on top of the 7-Eleven flew away. So that's my very first story that I got published, and I hope you guys enjoyed both of those readings. It was a really terrible reading. I don't even know what I'm doing, to be honest. Leave a comment below, tell me what you think, and I'll see you in the next video. Okay, so when I didn't realize how much I kept looking down at the ground or at the book I was reading. So I'm gonna try to be less awkward in these videos. I really, look, I'm just now starting out, so bear with me, guys. Like, don't hate, I'm trying so hard.